Welcome to the Steel Curtain Podcast. It's Monday, September 2nd, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are 5 days away from kicking off the 2025 NFL season at MetLife Stadium against the New York Jets. I'm Josh Yourish, and today I'm joined by new Steel Curtain co-host Mark Powell from FanSided.com to do our Steelers 2025 season predictions and get used to that name and that voice that you will hear because Mark is going to be with us throughout the season, doing a lot of instant reaction shows and hopping on different shows. So that's a voice you're going to hear throughout the year on the Steel Curtain Podcast. Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Josh. And I'd like to apologize in advance to all Steelers fans. The takes are, they're getting fiery, and we're starting early. We got revenge game on both sides here with Fields and Rodgers. So can't wait.
Can't wait to do it. I'll be with you instant reaction on Sunday. So make sure you are subscribed to the Steel Curtain Podcast right now. Like I said, we're going to do our official record predictions and bold predictions for the season. I have a little this or that game cooked up for Mark. But first, we want to start with some news. The Steelers signed Jaylen Warren to a 2-year contract extension that will pay him over $7 million this year. So he gets a little pay bump this year and includes $12 million guaranteed. He's now under contract through the 2027 season and was expected to be a free agent next spring. Mark, your thoughts on the deal?
I mean, I really like Jaylen Warren as a player. I know he's a bit of a smaller back, so there's always that you run some injury risk there. But he's proven himself. He came in as a UDFA, and honestly, per over the cap, that average annual value comes in pretty much right under Tony Pollard. So I don't see it as as an overpay for sure. And from the Steelers' perspective, because of that injury risk, like a nice little 2-year deal, I think it works well for both sides. And the running back market, it's tough for them to get paid right now. So it seems like Omar Khan just kind of took advantage when he could.
I am of two minds for this contract. I like it because I like Warren as a player, what you mentioned. I think he's good catching the ball out of the backfield, pretty dynamic in space. He's a really good pass protector. And I think that's really important, especially with a guy like Caleb Johnson, who he's now kind of tied to the hip with for the next couple of years. Caleb Johnson obviously has 4 years on that rookie deal. So that pairing makes a lot of sense to me. It makes more sense than the Najee Jaylen Warren pairing, especially in the Arthur Smith outside zone scheme. What I will say is it concerns me a little bit about what they saw from Warren or from Johnson in his first preseason and training camp. I was fine with it. I saw a lot of the bursts. I saw the vision. I think it was a fine preseason and fine training camp and everything from Warren or from Johnson. I do just, when you draft a guy that high, and it seems like the plan is you're going to run the wheels off of Warren this year as you get Johnson up to speed, and then, a disposable asset, move on from Warren. Now you have Johnson as your bell cow for the next X amount of years, and maybe you add a late round guy who can be that pass catcher, or you keep Kenneth Gainwell around, who you just signed, you just signed another running back. It does have me a little bit concerned that we're not going to see as much Caleb Johnson early this season.
Yeah.
And maybe his, timeline, his trajectory into that bell cow role is going to be a little slower than we'd like to see. So that's a hot take brain, kicking into action when you see a contract. That's totally reasonable for a good player who I like. And maybe that's just the spin of it that jumped into my brain. But I do worry a little bit. Maybe they're not seeing exactly what they thought from Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing, honestly. Just because, there were some videos circulating on social media during the preseason. I thought they were overblown. It was Johnson kind of missing the holes in the preseason games. I don't know if you saw that. I feel like he improved a lot kind of later on in the preseason, which was promising. I think these are two backs that really complement each other really well right now. And I think with the way the Steelers are built, especially, they're a very veteran-led team. It just makes sense to kind of play for the right now, even though Johnson is a rookie. I think having that 1 to 2 year timeline with like, several running backs you can trust make a lot of sense. So yeah, I definitely have that same concern because like, you take a running back in the second or third round, right? Like you expect him to be, the guy pretty early here.
Yeah.
Like even in fantasy drafts, I was seeing Johnson going off the board, earlier than I thought
Yeah.
he would. And then yeah, you get Warren signed like a few days later. You're like, oh, like what does this mean? So
Yeah, I definitely think we're getting into some predictions and stuff later, like I said.
yeah.
I definitely think Warren's gonna be the one this year. I
Mhm.
think Warren's gonna get maybe close to, if not over 200 carries this year. Like, I think it's gonna be pretty heavy dose of Jalen Warren. I think they gave him a lighter workload last year because they knew he was gonna be around another year, and Najee Harris was not going to be after they declined his 5th round option. I was gonna fantasy football's on the brain, right? Like everyone did their draft yesterday. I was going to mention that too, like looking at the amount of running backs that have a tandem, right? That's a big
Mhm.
issue kind of in fantasy football. Do you draft the running backs early? Do you not? Whatever. This is just how the NFL is, and Mike Tomlin has always loved having a bell cow. Even in the past, it was Le'Veon Bell, and then when he would go down, it would just be D'Angelo Williams, everything, and then James Conner showed up, and it was if Bell was down or when he left the team, it was James Conner gets every carry. Tomlin liked that attack and that approach. It doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. I think that's, getting with the times a little bit, which I've accused Tomlin of not doing in other circumstances. And will those accusations, I think, stand. But I'm totally fine with it. Like you said, it's a market level deal that I'm okay with. The price is fine. The player is good. This is a totally fine thing. And the Steelers need some foundational pieces on offense. So I'm good with it. What I'm more concerned about, and I think Steelers fans should be more concerned about, Cam Hayward.
Mhm.
He is reportedly, supposedly, I guess, not reportedly because it came from his mouth, not closing the door on a week 1 holdout. He was asked on his podcast if he'll be out there for week 1 by his co-host Hayden Walsh and said, quote, "We'll see." Hayward said earlier that nothing has changed with regard to his contract. He was holding in during training camp. He seemed like he ended that hold in, but nothing has changed. He's got no deal. Well, he has a deal, right? He's got no new deal that he wants. The 36-year-old is on year 1 of a 2-year, $29 million extension that he signed last offseason. I've given my thoughts on this kind of extensively. I'll share a little more about week 1, what I think, like if he's going to play, what it would mean if he doesn't. But Mark, what's your initial reaction?
I mean, it's absolutely concerning, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's stating the obvious. Cam is, a top 3 player on this defense, probably.
I think last year he was the most important player on the defense,
Yeah,
well,
right.
especially as
Yeah,
TJ was tailing off.
yeah,
I would argue
yeah,
he was the best and most important.
yeah, yeah. So like the idea of missing him for any period of time, even 1 week, when like sort of like I was saying with the Warren answer, it's like our timeline is very like immediate right now, right? So the idea of missing him for any period of time is pretty concerning. I don't fully understand the animosity some of the fan base has towards Cam. Like I don't think there's a lot of it out there, but like some of the media personalities I've heard, they, because he signed a contract literally like what last year, they're like,
Yeah,
I don't understand why he's doing this. This isn't a extremely rare thing in the NFL. Like Cam's coming off like honestly one of a year few of us saw coming from him at this age.
yeah.
So I certainly understand why he wants a raise, but considering he didn't get one at this point, yeah, the idea of him not playing, um, I think skipping game like the like him skipping games almost would hurt his rep a little bit and like negotiating I guess value a little bit if
It's
that makes sense.
never proven like Le'Veon Bell is really the only one who did it, who really said,
Yeah.
"No, I'm holding out, I'm not playing." And he didn't get a good deal the next year, and he was a worse player because,
Yeah.
NFL
He
not
just
for
didn't
long.
play.
Like yeah, it doesn't work out. And that's I think since then we really haven't seen many players be willing to actually do a holdout. Hassan Reddick kind of did last year, but that was
Mhm.
a weird situation. Um, I think he will play.
Yeah.
And to your point about the animosity, I wouldn't say like I have any animosity. I don't begrudge him for wanting a raise. I would too that late in my career, coming off an all-pro year. But I just, I take issue is the wrong word. I just think Cam messed up, right? Like if you thought you were going to have this year, okay, bet on yourself. Don't sign the deal last year and you
Yeah.
get more money this offseason, right? That option existed. The option of the story of him saying, oh, when I have an all pro year, I'm going to come back and ask for more. And everyone kind of laughing. You got to put that in writing. Like if that's something you believe, that's something you feel, you want to bet on yourself in that way, give yourself some type of player opt out. Like these contracts in the NFL are so flexible. You can create so many outs and non-guarantees and whatever. And most of those are beneficial to the team. But what if you truly felt this way, create a deal that was beneficial to you that way. Like it was possible. And if you wanted to wield that leverage, last year was the time heading into your final season, not right now. And I granted he was coming off of an injury and wasn't coming off of a first team all pro season. I just think he misplayed it. And that's what happens, right? Like you're 2 years left on your deal. Let's talk about it next year. Have another all pro season. For week 1 though, with Derek Harmon now definitely being out, Nick Herbig is questionable. That's, outside linebacker versus defensive end and different position, but still defensive line against a team that we know is going to run the ball a lot. You mentioned the Justin Fields revenge game. Are you concerned about how, if he doesn't play in week 1 or if he's not 100% or not, whatever, do you have concerns about the Steelers getting upset? I guess we'll call it an upset. Like, do you have more concerns about the Steelers losing that week 1 matchup with the Jets?
I mean, I'm already kind of concerned about them losing, potentially losing the game, even if Cam played. I mean, it's just it's the sort of, I mean, first off, it's week 1, really. Anything can happen. We don't know much about these teams, and also, like just because of all of those external factors, kind of the drama surrounding the game, the idea of adding in either Cam not, being fully ready or Cam not playing at all. Like it just, it feels like, the Steelers might be a couple dominoes away here from kind of a, I don't want to call it a rude awakening, but like it's just that it's the kind of game where they just have to be careful. Like Tomlin has these games every now and then where like it seems like he he has the far better team, far more talented team, and they
play down to the level of the opponent. Like I feel like that happens a lot with Tomlin.
Yeah, but like, and like I'm not trying to talk crap about the Jets here or anything. Like they could be talented. Maybe they found something in Fields. I like Aaron Glenn a lot as a head coach. Like I think they have a lot of things going for them in their future, even if Fields isn't the answer. But yeah, the Steelers should win this game in theory, and the idea of like Hayward, adding to the things kind of working, I guess, against them. Like that could that could turn off some of the fan base at least a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't be thrilled about it personally.
Yeah. I wouldn't. I don't think it would change how I feel about Cam Hayward drastically.
Yeah, of course.
But it would be a frustrating thing for a team that is all in, right? All season, all off season, everyone's kind of said this team's all in. Like they're not all in. They have 12 draft picks next year. They traded George Pickens for next year 3rd round pick. Like they're not, but ostensibly they're somewhat in, right? They've pushed some of the chips to the middle of the table for this year. And when you have a softer schedule at the front than the back half, you avoid some of those divisional games, divisional opponents early. This is a game you got to win. I'm excited to see YA Black, whether Hayward plays or not. Like, I think that's something that's interesting. And if he doesn't play, then okay, we're really going to get a heavy dose of YA Black, especially with Benton questionable and Harmon out. And then Herbig potentially injured on like this defensive line's depth is going to get tested pretty early. The last piece of news before we get to some of the bold predictions, the Steelers sign inside linebacker John Radigan's kind of special teams ace to the practice squad as a 6th inside linebacker after Mark Robinson got claimed on waivers or decided to sign with the Patriots when he was on waivers. the Steelers kept Carson Bruner for the reason of being a special teams ace along with Miles Killebrew. This is really down the roster stuff. Do you have any thoughts?
Only that it's smart to add, I think, inside linebacker depth at this point in the season. Like sort of like you mentioned, they only had 5 on the roster. Yeah, we'll see what comes of this. I was surprised that Mark Robinson didn't make the roster. I suppose.
I agree.
Yeah, like that kind of caught me off guard. So I'm glad that they found some way to replace him. But like, is this guy going to be better than Mark Robinson would have been? I don't know.
Yeah. All right. I think that's enough John Radigan talk. Time for the bold predictions. Before we get there, if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Still Curtain podcast, please subscribe to the Still Curtain podcast on YouTube. We really appreciate your support, and you'll get more of myself and Mark Powell throughout the season, both together and separate and everything. Bold predictions. I go to you first. I left the board wide open. It could be any prediction, any open-ended thing, just getting us talking about how we view this team, this roster this season.
Mm-hmm.
Your number one bold prediction for the season is?
So my first bold prediction for the season, I'm still on the Roman Wilson bandwagon. I think he can, every time I talk to other Steelers fans, there's all this confusion about why we haven't added a second wide receiver, right? I mean, we had one in Pickens and traded him away after getting Metcalf, right? So it was there's a lot of confusion. I mean, Gabe Davis just signed today, I think, with the Bills, right? Or he signed recently. It's like
Amari Cooper with the Raiders.
Yeah,
like these retread veterans.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of questions going around, like why wouldn't the Steelers take a chance there? And they've been interested in some guys. I think Marcus Valdez-Scantling, they were finalists, right? But from his college days at Michigan, and I have family up there who watch every Michigan Wolverines game, and they keep telling me how good of a route runner Roman can be, how special he can be when he's 100%. That's always been the thing, has to be 100%. But if he can stay healthy, I think it would explain a lot about why the Steelers haven't, gone out and gotten that wide receiver too. I think it could, he could be a solid complement to DK. Now the Steelers are taking a chance in even considering Wilson as their wide receiver too at this point, or as a potential wide receiver too. But in terms of bold predictions, I think that I feel pretty confident in that one.
I generally agree with you, regardless of if Wilson pans out or not, / if Calvin Austin pans out, takes another step or not. Because I was impressed with what I saw from Calvin Austin, not to change to a different player, but I was impressed with what I saw from him last year as he's clearly a wide receiver 3, a worthwhile top of the depth chart guy who can be slot and outside and vertical stretch. I also would predict that Roman Wilson becomes the wide receiver 2. I agree with you there. And regardless of how either of those players play, in my opinion, it's the right decision not to sign a veteran, because this team to me has no Super Bowl ceiling whatsoever.
Yeah.
So get information about these young guys. You have to know coming out of this season, do we give Calvin Austin a contract extension? Do we believe in Roman Wilson going forward as the number 2 to DK Metcalf so we can move off of Austin? Or do we have to draft a guy high in the draft? You need information on these guys. And I think too often the Steelers, especially Mike Tomlin, is willing to play the veterans to a fault and to no end. And we saw that with Levi Wallace over Joey Porter Jr. and things of that nature. You need an answer on these young guys. You need an answer on this young receiving core. So I think Roman Wilson should be the wide receiver 2 in functionality. And I think he will be effective enough to be a good complement. I've talked about him a lot throughout the offseason, but I really like that DK Metcalf is going to be your vertical, physical guy. And Wilson, while he's not a yak underneath guy, that's not really where I see him. I kind of see him as this weird, zone spot filling possession guy who's undersized. That's what I liked about him most at Michigan. He just had a really good feel for the defensive secondary, where to sit down in zone. And then if he's got the vertical pop that we saw in the preseason, that's a pretty good receiver. That's a nice compliment, especially to DK. So I'm with you there. My first bold prediction, and this one is maybe a little less open-ended, maybe a little more bold. I'll get your thoughts. Jonnu Smith leads the Steelers in receptions.
Ooh.
This is both a Jonnu Smith positive take and an Aaron Rodgers / offense in general negative take. I don't know that I fully 100%, like if you made me bet my life, I would say DK Metcalf is going to lead the Steelers in receptions. But I think there's a world in which Jonnu Smith, who caught 91 passes with Miami last year, was a Pro Bowler, leads this team in receptions because Aaron Rodgers last season, coming off the Achilles, shaky offensive line situation in New York, had the lowest time to throw of his career. He also had one of the lowest average depth of targets of his career. This is late career Ben. Aaron Rodgers' superpower, how he attacks downfield, how he creates explosive plays, is outside of the pocket. That doesn't really exist anymore. And when you look at the receiving core for the Steelers, it's DK Metcalf. He's a downfield threat. And I think Rodgers, like, you can 3-step drop, get a go ball off. Like, that's how you can access some of the explosives. We saw Russell Wilson live and die with that. But ultimately, to move the chains and keep this offense functional in the passing game, you need a guy who can get yards after the catch. That's not Roman Wilson to me. That's not really Calvin Austin either. Though he's a good punt returner and shifty, he is kind of a vertical slot guy. I think that's Jonnu Smith. Like, Freiermuth is probably the tight end one. He's a possession guy. He's a seam runner. Like, he can be that vertical tight end and a jump ball threat. Jonnu Smith is a yards after the catch, quick slant screen type of receiver. He was really effective like that in Miami. And if Rodgers needs to get the ball out of his hands quickly because he can't move, because he's 41, because his time to throw is quick, he doesn't want to get hit anymore, I think Jonnu Smith is probably your best option to get the ball out of your hands to.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, actually. Yeah, he's I was happy when they made that move to begin with. I was pleasantly surprised because
I was happy with the move before the Jonnu inclusion, because that kind of came later, like after the Minka for Ramsey swap.
Yeah,
I was pleasantly surprised afterwards. Okay, now we're getting Jonnu too.
Yeah. But like I guess I'm curious, how do you think he pairs with Freiermuth overall?
I love it. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense. And the NFL is going more and more towards big bodies, more and more towards 12 personnel. Last year was the highest usage of 12 personnel since like the 11 personnel assance that Sean McVay and everyone led in 2017. That continues to tick up because defenses have gotten lighter to cover the outside zone, stretch zone stuff that Arthur Smith is still running, while most of the league is going back to power schemes, gap scheme stuff. 12 personnel, like multi-tight end sets, 12, 13, whatever, is one of the few ways you can dictate to a defense, you have to put your big bodies out here. Like, we are telling you what you have to do, and if you don't, we'll run it right at you. So I think that, I mean, that's always been true in football, but I think it's more true now when linebackers are lighter, defensive linemen are lighter. And I think the fit makes a ton of sense because Freiermuth can be the over the middle possession vertical guy. Jonnu Smith can be a slot receiver if you want him to. He can be in the backfield if you want him to. Like, when I was up at training camp, Jonnu was in the backfield. Connor Hayward was in the backfield. Jonnu was out wide at wide receiver, not even in the slot. Like, I think he can do so many different things and is such a different playmaker than Freiermuth that they work really well together. And I haven't even mentioned Darnell Washington's name, who is just an extra offensive lineman who can also catch over the middle of the field. And I'm routinely blown away by how athletic and comfortable he is in space. I think the only path for the Steelers being a top 12 to 10 offense, and I don't see any ceiling above that, is using these tight ends a ton. And that just gives you a massive advantage both in the run game and in the passing game.
No, I mean, it's an Arthur Smith offense. I mean,
exactly.
He knows how to use Jonnu. Like, he's done it
had him
before.
before.
Yeah, I have a lot of faith that, like, I mean, I sort of going back to fantasy football again, I took him in my draft because I'm very confident that in this offense he will thrive. And to your point, yeah, like, I hope that this offensive line develops, which will lead me into my second bold prediction at some point here. But I hope it gets better. But with an older Rodgers, right? Like he can't rely on his legs like he used to. He can't really extend plays. There's going to be a lot of short drops, and as you said, like that's where Jonnu comes in.
Your second bold prediction.
My second bold prediction is I think we finally see some positive signs from Broderick Jones, or we see more positive signs from Broderick Jones. I like that the Steelers at least tried to invest in their offensive line the last few years, in the draft with him and Troy Fautanu, and I think that Broderick in particular was forced to kind of play at out of his natural position quite a bit, and just like moved around the line a lot. I'm a little worried about him at left tackle. I'm not going to lie. This is a prediction I'm not extraordinarily confident in just because of his history, and who his quarterback is, frankly. But I think, for the sake of positivity here and what I'm hoping for from the Steelers in the future, even beyond Rodgers, it just like it has to be a must. Like we need this to happen. So I'm going to say that Broderick and Fautanu and like some of their earlier draft picks on the line start to kind of showcase why the Steelers took them in the first place, and just like it helps build their depth kind of long term, because like just like the Eagles, every team is built through the line of scrimmage nowadays, and the Steelers have some Eagles ties in their front office, right? So makes a lot of sense.
Andy Weidel has made a big push when he got here with Omar Khan and as his right hand man. You saw the drafting change. It was more consensus board drafting, which Howie Roseman does a great job of in Philadelphia. Does a lot of in Philadelphia, and works a lot. And it was also just building through the trench play. I am with you when you mentioned Fautanu having a breakout year. I think he's a stud. I think he looked really good in preseason. I think he moves really well. I think he mirrors pass rushers really well. I am worried about Broderick Jones. Yeah. Really worried about Broderick Jones. I'm the complete flip side of you, and that's fun. Like, I saw some signs in preseason of like, oh, that's a little better. He's a little more comfortable on the left side full time. But like, the reason he got moved around is because he couldn't beat out Dan Moore Jr., right? Like, we can blame the Steelers coaching staff for that. And yes, it was probably malpractice because he's the more valuable guy. You have to just develop him and see what you have. But he couldn't beat out Dan Moore Jr. Like, he would have gotten that shot to develop if he could have beaten out Dan Moore Jr. And I keep saying his name because he's one of the worst offensive tackles in the NFL. And at least starting caliber, Gellick. And has been for years. I think Broderick Jones is sloppy. I think he's athletic, but it's sloppy. And I don't think it's coming around. I think we're desperate to see the positive signs.
Yeah.
So anytime it is a good play, we're like, oh yes, here it is. And I feel that myself too. I feel that compulsion as well. But I think he's going to be a flat bust. Like, I think after this year, it's done. And they're going to have to go into free agency or the draft to find another offensive tackle. Because I think it could be potentially a disaster, especially because of who the quarterback is, like you mentioned.
Yeah, well, it's definitely make or break for him. I feel. Like this is it, which is kind of why I don't know. I'm banking on it slightly. I feel more confident in Fautanu, which was the second part of this prediction. I do feel as though he has kind of Pro Bowl potential this year if he plays the way I think he can. So that's definitely more confident in him. Jones is still kind of a wild card, and this is pretty much it for him. I'm tired of defending him, I guess. Like, seriously, like I feel like, since he entered the league and he's been moved around so much, and all the Dan Moore stuff, like
there are a lot of excuses to make, and I've made a lot of them, but I think I've reached my wit's end this offseason as well.
Yeah. I'm like 3 games away. Yeah.
Well, we'll check back in week 3
Seriously.
with Mark and see what we think about Broderick Jones. My next prediction, and this kind of leads into your prediction as well, so we can kind of maybe just tag team this one. The Steelers secondary doesn't improve with Jalen Ramsey. Finished like whatever you want to take from passing yards per game. Like that's not really 24th last year. Okay. Teams are like Tennessee was way up there because you didn't have to throw on them. Like everyone was beating them. You could just run the ball. So I don't think that's like a good metric or a good barometer to use. But I do know that like this, anytime the Steelers went up against a competent quarterback and a good passing offense, they pretty consistently faltered, right? And then the Ravens just dismantled everything. I like the Jalen Ramsey, Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. I think it is good theory in that cornerback is more valuable than safety. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick was not misused because he's a good option as the post safety. Like if you're going to play a lot of cover 3, he can cover a lot of ground, but he's no longer a ball hawking guy. Then you're kind of taking that playmaking aspect away from his game. Also, maybe the playmaking aspect isn't there anymore. But this take is more grounded in you don't get better in the secondary with a bunch of old guys.
Yeah.
Right? Like Joey Porter Jr. is young, and we've seen a really promising rookie year. And I was pretty disappointed with Joey Porter Jr.'s performance last year. Like he is somebody who's built to deal with T. Higgins. And maybe it's unfair to compare anyone to their performance against T. Higgins, but he's not even since he's number 1, and he got handled. You add Darius Slay, which I like as a free agent acquisition because he got cut. That doesn't hurt you against the compensatory pick model, and the Steelers are getting a lot of compensatory picks because that's how they built their free agency. So like the theory all makes sense to me, but he's in his 30s. Jalen Ramsey's in his 30s. Corner is a position where it just falls off like that. Like when it's done, when it goes, it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a good chance that we're halfway through the season and like, did we just sign Patrick Peterson again with Darius Slay? And then we have serious questions about, do we have to move Jalen Ramsey to safety? I don't think Ramsey's bad. I think he was good last year, and I think he will be good, especially in the nickel. But I don't think this is a situation where now you have Juan Thornhill at safety. I love Deshaun Elliott, so you will not hear me say a bad word about him. But I have a lot of questions at cornerback. I have a lot of questions about this being an aging unit, the entire defense, but especially the secondary. And I just don't think there's going to be much of a step. Also, not to go so long-winded, Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, the way they run this defense is just stubborn as hell. And it's cover 3, and it's not like every once in a while you'll see them throw this crazy game plan at Josh Allen or at Joe Burrow. And it's like, what is this? This is a great performance. And they're running multiple safeties out there. Like you think back to those week 1 games 2 years in a row when the Steelers upset the Bills and the Bengals. Every once in a while you get that. And then most of the time it's cover 3, standard stuff, and Joe Flacco goes in for Anthony Richardson, and he knows where the easy buttons are against cover 3 because he's been in the NFL forever, and he carves you. So I think it's partly systemic, partly age-related, but I think it's just going to be stagnation from the Steelers secondary.
Yeah. I feel like you and I have the same third bold prediction here in a sense. Yeah, like I didn't hate the Minkah move necessarily. Like I understood why, that he has flaws at this point in his career. Much like you said, the fit wasn't really perfect anymore either. My first question when they traded him was like, okay, well, how are they going to replace him? And what are Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay at this point in their careers, right? Like, yeah, much like you said, they're getting up there. You like Ramsey as a nickel. I could see that. I don't know if I see either him or Slay like taking over like safety on a even semi-permanent basis. Like it's just, Juan Thornhill, maybe he surprises me, but like all I know is, having written about him last year, Browns fans hated that guy. And if Browns fans hate that guy, I got bad news for him when dealing with angry Yinzers. So like I just maybe he'll surprise us. But yeah, I love Elliott too. I think he's awesome. I think he might have even benefited from having Minka back there as well.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that Joey Porter Jr. with some veteran presences around him takes another step this year. Like, ideally, in a perfect world, prime Ramsey is kind of what you would, close to what you would want Joey Porter Jr. to be, right? Like,
well, yeah, I mean that would
obviously,
be
yeah, or
fantastic.
prime Darius Slay, right? It's like it makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense, like having those guys around Joey Porter, but like relying on them too heavily and relying on them to move around so much, like especially as we get towards the end of the year, they might be dealing with like some injuries. Who knows? Like it's just
Yeah.
it just feels it feels like a strategy that could just fall apart if like one little thing goes wrong, I guess.
Yeah, and even if that thing isn't an injury, but it's just, what if Joey Porter Jr. doesn't take the next step?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now we're running Brandon Eccles out there with Slay and Ramsey, and you're really leaning on those. I have concerns about it. To the Juan Thornhill point, he looked really good in camp.
Yeah.
Right when I was up there, I really liked what I saw from Thornhill. I was up there for one day. But I heard good things from the other reporters that had been there more often. And so I have some optimism there. And if one position on an NFL roster is going to be your weakness, free safety, all right, like I'll live with that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're playing some too high shell stuff and like you can just cover it pretty well, I think, for the most part. But I have concerns. So that was, kind of a 2-for-1 there on the bold predictions, but it's interesting that we're aligned because I think there is a lot of optimism that, oh, this defense is going to be awesome. And look at that secondary, look at that defensive line. Like, where are the problems? We're not even talking about linebacker. And I don't know that I loved what I saw I know I don't love what I saw from Patrick Queen last year. So
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of question marks for the most expensive defense in the NFL that added a first-round pick.
Yeah. I mean, the Steelers invest more in their defense than any other NFL team, right? So it's just like you expect the most from them then, or you should be able to. And yeah, it's concerning to me, to your earlier point that I obviously there are some outliers, right? Like you mentioned the I guess Buffalo and Cincinnati games, but like when they do go up against top tier offenses late in the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like they definitely fall apart every time. They tend to play.
And those games were years ago
Yes.
that I was pulling up.
Yeah,
like mentioning.
yeah. And like, but they tend to, they make bad quarterbacks look like horrendous, and they take advantage of those players, which is great. Good defenses should do that, but good defenses should also be able to keep you in games against top tier offenses. At least some of the time.
And it feels like that never happens. And that's why the Steelers, in my opinion, have absolutely no Super Bowl ceiling. Because if there's any path to winning playoff games and a Super Bowl and whatever, it is this defense being a top 5, 3, maybe 1 unit in the NFL. And I just don't see that from, even despite all they have invested into it. I see it as the 9th best defense in the NFL, which is good and fine. But when it's the most expensive defense in the NFL with a defensive-minded head coach that added to Derek Harmon, and maybe you even hit on a Y.A. Black, like you add some pieces. Peyton Wilson looks like he's going to be a stud. And then it's still like 9th best. Okay. 9-8, right? Not to maybe give away my prediction.
I was going to say, yeah. That also sounds like the last 3 years.
No one would ever guess that somebody would predict the Steelers to finish 9-8. So I can't possibly reveal that.
Shocking news.
Shocking news.
Yeah, no, but well, I think like something that I've really noticed the last, few years, especially as they, continue to just recycle 9-8 seasons, or, cycle in and out players too. They've spent a lot on defense, and they've drafted a lot of, high profile players on defense too. And like, at a certain point, it has to be a like systemic thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, coaching.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Like,
almost like the
I don't
coach who
think I'm
hasn't won
breaking
a playoff
news
game.
there, but
It's almost like the coach who hasn't won a playoff game since 2016 maybe isn't that good of a coach.
maybe. But we got to whisper. We got to whisper that nationally. We'll have to hear
Yeah.
about the
Yeah, don't let
how many straight
anyone,
winning
any national
seasons.
reporters hear that
Yeah,
anyone said that
yeah,
anyone in Pittsburgh thinks that Mike Tomlin might not be the best coach in the NFL.
yeah.
All right, my final prediction. And this one on the bold meter, it's not like the spiciest, but this is a player I just really want to talk about because I think he's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nick Herbig finishes with the second most sacks on the Steelers. He had 5.5 last year, finished fourth. I think he's just an awesome pass rusher. I have questions. He's questionable for week 1, had that hamstring injury, but like, did you see the couple plays against Carolina before he got hurt? Whew. He's just so fast off the edge, and he's a little bit undersized, and that hurts him in the run game, definitely. And maybe he's more of a specialist, and I don't care because I think a specialist playing, if he can get just a few more snaps and cut into Highsmith's work a little bit more, because Highsmith is a totally fine player that I like,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he's just fine. I think Herbig could be awesome. And in flashes, I've seen it. I think he cracks 10 sacks this year if he gets the opportunities, is my maybe caveat on this already not so spicy take. But he's a player I love. I really want to talk about him. What have you seen from Herbig in his first 2 years with the Steelers and maybe through this preseason? Do you share a similar cheery outlook on one of my favorite Steelers?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if he gets the playing time, he'll definitely he'll show out. I feel like every time I watch him in a preseason game or anytime you see any training camp tape or takes on his training camp performance, it's positive. So I'm assuming that the Steelers coaching staff is seeing that too. My only question is like, how much time do you think like how much of a role do you think he carves, and like does that, and how much does that take away from Highsmith, I guess? Like how many plays per game do you realistically see him getting?
I'm fine with Herbig. I would be fine with Herbig being out there like almost every third down
Yeah.
and cutting into the Highsmith's work a lot. Highsmith is a good player. He is fine.
You got to keep
I
saying
think Herbig can be awesome. So if I'm picking one of the two to be opposite TJ Watt, but I think ultimately you don't have to be so picky about it. Like I think the best case scenario is you keep a lot of these guys fresh. You don't let TJ Watt get banged up like he has in multiple seasons. And every year he finishes like under 15 sacks. It's because he gets banged up like he did at the end of the year last year. So keep him fresh. Like give Highsmith some run, or give Herbig some run out there with Highsmith, and give Jack Sawyer some run with TJ, and like just mix these guys up. I'm not so high on Sawyer. I didn't love the
Yeah.
preseason. We don't
Yeah.
really have to delve into that too much. He's a 4th round pick. Just because he's a big name 4th round pick and you know his name from Ohio State doesn't mean you expect more than a 4th round pick. Like I think he'll be fine. But I think I would play him more than Highsmith if I had my way. But I also think he has some issues in the run game. And I think setting the edge and just as an undersized guy, I think that's a problem. But I don't see why he can't be one of the most devastating situational pass rushers in the NFL. So I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have, to your point, yeah, like especially as Watt gets up there in age now, like, it just makes a lot of sense to have more bodies and
Yeah.
let alone one that can really, cause havoc.
And
So
move guys around too,
yeah,
because like that
yeah,
was a big issue that I harped on all year last year. Oh, Watt's gonna rush off the right against the right tackle. Like they're gonna chip him, they're gonna double team
yeah,
him. They know where he's gonna go. So move him around, have a NASCAR package, get Herbig, Highsmith, and Watt out there together. Like get some speed on, do some different things, do some
yeah.
interesting things on defense, please,
Creativity
and
got
use your talented players to do them. So I would love that, and I think if it's kind of a big if, but if Herbig gets the opportunities, I think he's one of the best defensive players on the team this year.
Mhm.
Okay. Now to the game that I've cooked up for you.
Oh, geez.
This or that. We're doing a more of this or more of that for the Steelers. And again, it's a lens to talk about these players and their seasons and everything. So we're not going to hold you to the fire on these predictions unless you do really well. Then maybe we'll bring them up late in the season. But just let's talk about the outlook of these players. This one is maybe a bit of a stretch, but let me explain it before we freak out. And you can play along in the chat if you would like to. We would love for you to play along in the chat. Steelers this or that, more TJ Watt sacks or Aaron Rodgers touchdown passes. Now, Aaron Rodgers in the FanDuel Sportsbook, his over-under for touchdown passes is set at 22.5. Watt's career high in sacks is 22.5. That would be the best year for Watt and the worst year for Rodgers. But I think it's worth talking about things in that lens, considering Watt, before Micah Parsons' contract, became the highest paid defensive player in the history of the NFL. And Aaron Rodgers is coming off of indisputably his worst season and is 41 years old. What say you, Mark Powell?
I'm still gonna take Rodgers. I can't believe, I love TJ, and I would love for him to have.
And again, that's not a diss, right?
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Much like you said, even though it was Rodgers' worst season, he still had 28 touchdown passes last year. I understand that the offense is different. Hopefully they're like relying on the run a lot more than the Jets did. And they're very, they can kind of help carry him in some ways.
But Rodgers loves to throw it on the goal line. That's something that has always been the story with Aaron Rodgers. So that helps juice these numbers up a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm going to take Rodgers, and much to your point about the development of Herbig and just the presence of Highsmith, I could see them cutting into TJ's sack numbers a little bit, not a ton, but to your point, 22.5 is his like career high. So I just
matched the NFL single season record. So
if Aaron stays healthy, which is massive, because I don't feel super confident in that either. But for the sake of optimism, I'm going to say he stays healthy for at least most of the season. I'm going to take Aaron there.
How do you feel? I know you hinted at it a little bit. How do you feel about Watt going forward, about this contract? You haven't really had the opportunity to share your opinions on it on the show. Did you like the deal? Do you think it's going to age well with Watt? And where do you see his sack total being? I mean, sack total isn't everything, right? Well, I've been imploring Steelers fans to look at more than just sacks with pass rushers, because pressures and everything are important and impactful. But for it being an easy round number, where do you kind of see the ceiling for TJ Watt? Do you think it could be another career year?
I mean, he had like 11.5 last year. He's over 30, which that he could still have plenty left in him. I'm hoping for somewhere in the 13 to 14 range. I think that's within reach.
Which I think would be a disappointment for most Steelers fans, and based on that contract.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. But with where he's at in his career, and he can still make a bigger impact than just sack numbers, like you said. Like if he's pressuring at a high rate, if he's helping create opportunities for others on like Highsmith and Herbig on like the other side of the defensive line.
And I think he's one of the best run defending edges
that
in the league.
As well. Yeah.
So
I totally I understand the contract just based on where the market was, right? Like it felt like they either had to choose between potentially losing him or in the long term for sure, or paying him Myles Garrett money, or over Myles Garrett money, right? So it's like they were kind of between a rock and a hard place. And I think because they kind of lucked out with the Rodgers contract, or just not paying a QB like a ton of money right now. I was fine with it. I love players that get to spend the vast majority of their careers in Pittsburgh. I think it's awesome that he gets to do that. In terms of a whether it'll look bad in a few years, I think
the cap's always going up.
Yeah. So that all depends on like how like he develops with age, how if he can still make that sort of impact at 32, 33, whatever, so
I think you made a great point with the not paying a quarterback aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's my justification for it, because I didn't love the deal. Knee jerk. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of
Yeah.
money. I don't see him being a player that ages particularly well, especially with the wear and tear and how he's been beaten down, and been banged up in recent seasons. But I get it, especially if you're signing Rodgers. You can't really sign, like, it doesn't make much sense to sign Rodgers, a 41-year-old
Mhm.
quarterback, and then trade away your best defensive player who's 30. So I got it. I understand it. I was thankful that it was a shorter contract than a 5-year
Yeah.
deal or something
Absolutely.
lengthy. And there are some outs in it. So I'm fine with it. Wasn't my favorite contract ever, but I think the quarterback point is the right one, that it makes it a lot easier to stomach knowing that. So that's why I wanted to compare him to the quarterback and kind of talk about that outlook. And before we get off of it, what is your ceiling for Rodgers touchdowns? Like, do you see, uh, and not even just to answer like specifically a number, because I don't actually care about if you're like 29. Oh wow, I had 27. Do you think he's gonna have a good year?
Geez. Yes. Yes. Sorry. It's
It's
tough
a
because
lot
yeah,
question for a
he
41
could
year
go
old.
down in one snap. We literally saw it like two. It's just
Yeah,
it's impossible. I think for if we're comparing it to his own history, no.
yeah,
But if we're comparing it to last year with, I would hope, better, like a better offensive system, a better defense behind him. They've very much tried to tailor the scheme to him. It seems. I would say I'd say better than last year, but honestly not by much. But for the Steelers standards at QB, since Ben got old, like
yeah.
that might be enough to make the playoffs and maybe win a game. But we'll see about
I
that.
think I'm rather low. Like, I think the arm's still there. I don't think the arm necessarily was ever the superpower, right? I think it
Yeah.
was, but in the context of he could throw it from any platform and like create out structure, and like that was kind of the thing. But I think, like you said, even if it's a pretty subpar Aaron Rodgers year, it'll probably be the Steelers' best quarterback year since 18, right? 19, Ben gets hurt.
Oh, that's so
Obviously
sad.
not that year. 20, Ben is a shell of himself. 21, he's even more of a shell of himself. 22, it's Mitch and Kenny and everything. It's been bad for a while. You know, I think it could be the best Steelers quarterback year in a while and not be all that inspiring.
Yeah, it's not exciting to talk about.
Yeah,
That's why when you asked that, I was like,
it's a loaded
maybe, but
question. Yeah.
yeah, for the Steelers standard,
Good for who?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the standard
Good
is the
for Aaron
standard,
Rodgers?
including
No.
quarterback,
Yeah.
including meh quarterback play. The standard is the standard.
Okay, number 2, more Caleb Johnson carries or DK Metcalf receptions. And I think what made me want to do this one is the discussion we had earlier about Jalen Warren's contract and what that means for Johnson. This is kind of is he really going to be the bell cow guy? And I also brought up the thought that maybe Jonnu's the leading receiver for this team. So where are you at on these two guys? What do you think? More Johnson carries or Metcalf receptions?
I'm going to take Caleb on this one. I'm going to take
Okay.
Caleb. Yeah, I think I expect him to, as the season goes on, especially kind of take on a bigger role in the
Hmm.
offense. Some of the weaknesses that are there, some of the blocking problems or catching out of the backfield, whatever they may be. You would like to think that he'd make some strides there. Also his vision, but yeah, I expect him to play a big role. I think from just like some basic research, the average backup running back tends to get about like 5 to 10 carries a game, like especially if they're as good as Caleb.
Yeah.
In an offense like the Steelers, which like relies heavily on the run game. Jalen Warren, I just don't see him as the kind of guy who's going to get 35, 30 carries a game.
Yeah.
So I think that just leaves a lot of room for Caleb. Yeah, if you do that math, that should be over, DK's top season ever, right? So
Yeah, 90 catches
um,
is his career high. He's never had an over 100 catch season. I don't think he's just that type of high volume receiver.
yeah,
So I agree with you ultimately about that decision. The only way Caleb Johnson doesn't get there is it's Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell until week 6, week 7. Like Mike Tomlin really kind of puts Johnson on ice
yeah,
and doesn't trust the rookie. Like maybe there's a fumble issue. I'm not saying he has fumble issues or whatever, but you can quickly, as a young running back, find yourself in the doghouse. That's really the only way that happens. I also think Caleb Johnson has a pretty good year, probably 125 to 150 carries, maybe even a little more than that. But I think he'll be a pretty big part of the offense.
yeah, and I also have some questions about DK too, how he'll fit in this offense, how if Rodgers can even throw the ball that far, much like you
Yeah.
said, like or consistently, it's just yeah, and like he's gonna get a ton of attention too. Like, like I'm high on Roman, like we said, but like,
Mhm.
like DK is going to be, facing really tough coverages to start the season, like until Roman Wilson can break out, or Calvin Austin, like until one of
Yeah.
them can really prove themselves and take some of the pressure off of him. I feel like he's going to have a tough time putting up like, 8 to 10 catches a game.
And that might not even be an until, it might be an if, right?
Yeah,
Like Wilson and Austin, maybe it never comes.
yeah, exactly.
And then it is really just a DK Metcalf centric passing game where he gets all the attention from the opposing defense.
Hmm.
Final one here. More Jalen Ramsey interceptions or Roman Wilson touchdowns. You've been high on Roman Wilson. This one is a little more random. Turnovers aren't sticky. Like
Yeah.
for context, Roman Wilson does not have an NFL touchdown. He played 5 snaps last season. And Jalen Ramsey's career high is 4 interceptions in a year. He's done that 3 times. What are your thoughts?
Oh man, I do think Roman's going to have a good year, but in terms of touchdown count, like with all the weapons the Steelers have in the red zone, they have 2
Mhm.
solid tight ends, and they
3,
have
really. I mean, Darnell Washington,
yeah,
they've
yeah,
used him on like fades and split
yeah,
out,
yeah,
like use his size.
yeah, and DK is just a massive target.
Yeah.
So the idea of Roman Wilson putting up, let's say more than 4 touchdowns or something,
Mhm.
that's that, I find that hard to believe, I guess. Doesn't mean he couldn't have a great season without that, but
Mhm.
yeah, I'm gonna take and hope that Ramsey ups that interception counter a bit. I think with his style of play, he can be a ball hawk, especially if they move him around to safety every now and then, or like nickel. I think as long as the Steelers are flexible with Ramsey's position, and as long as he's willing to kind of, you know, um, do it all, then
Yeah. Be
yeah,
that chess piece.
yeah. Then I have high hopes for him in this defense. Even though I don't think he's like CB1 material, I do think he can, yeah, cause some turnovers, create some havoc and whatnot.
Yeah, that one's the most dart throw of any
Yeah,
of
it's
the
a tough one.
predictions, but I think I thought it was a fun one to just talk about those 2 players that I'm interested in, and obviously new faces relative to actually being on the field, especially in Roman Wilson's case.
Hmm.
So before we get to our final record prediction, and we are going to chat a tiny bit about Steelers and Jets. If you want a full preview, come back tomorrow, the Wednesday show. Tommy Jagai, Shane Kubis, they're going to break it down, dive into everything. They do amazing previews. So be there for that. We're doing the season long stuff today, but we're going to hit on that a little bit. Before we get there, though, Steelers awards. So we go MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Defensive Rookie of the Year. Just run through your list, Mark, what you think, your thoughts on any of them.
Sure. Yeah. So I've got TJ as overall MVP. I think he'll have a strong season. He's obviously he's he's the heart and soul of this team. So
Mhm.
if for any reason he does like really struggle, then the Steelers are just yeah, they're going to be terrible. So or their defense is not going to be what it needs to be. So MVP, defensive MVP, both TJ. Offensive MVP, I am hopeful for Rodgers. Definitely cross your fingers there. Again, has to stay healthy. I think if the Steelers are going to have a successful season and make the playoffs,
Mhm.
I don't think it's a hot take to say that Rodgers maybe has to be that. Maybe he
Yeah.
has to win that award. Like I think if for any reason he gets injured or he struggles, Steelers aren't going to really be in a position to be 9-8 even or 10-7. Like I feel like that's a pretty safe bet. In terms of offensive rookie of the year, I got Caleb, and defensive rookie of the year. I know Derek Harmon's going to miss some time here, but I'm hopeful that even with that missed time, he can carve out a very nice role for himself. And I was excited about that pick. So I think even in limited playing time, he can potentially notch that award or add that to his belt.
I think the last one, and that's just where I'll start, is probably the most interesting discussion because of the injury. I like Derek Harmon a lot too, and liked the pick a lot and thought he looked the part in preseason. And then obviously now he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks from that injury, maybe into the season. Like, you don't love that, but I don't think it means he can't make an impact. And the fact that Mike Tomlin was so quick to say, this is a guy who's going to start on our defensive line next to Cam Hayward, I think that means a lot because Tomlin doesn't do that for rookies, right?
Yeah.
Like he did it with Fautanu last year, and then Fautanu got hurt. But he didn't anoint Broderick Jones right away. Like he didn't anoint Joey Porter Jr. right away. Like he doesn't really do that. I have YA Black partially because of the injury to Harmon.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe mostly because of the injury to Harmon. But God, I loved what I saw from him in preseason. And this is falling for preseason hype. And I always say, don't do this. Don't overreact to the preseason. But when it's an individual player and when it's a player doing something that you didn't see on their college tape, okay, this is a data point. This is a very real data point against better competition than they had in college. I thought he was going to be a run plugging nose, a Casey Hampton type, like not even a Javon Hargrave type where Hargrave was the nose, but he was a really good pass rusher and moved to 3 technique when he got with the 49ers. I thought, okay, this is going to be just a true nose. That's it. He comes in, they say, no, he's going to play 3 technique. That's weird. Why wouldn't you move him to nose and Benton to 3 technique? Because he's a really good pass rusher and he like has some versatility and some swim moves and chop moves. And like he has a nuanced pass rush attack for a guy that's 6'6", 330. That's pretty ridiculous. And the fact that he's so disruptive at the line of scrimmage, especially in training camp, like I was just really impressed with him deflecting passes and pushing the pocket. I think he's going to be an important player on that defensive line. And I'm just all in on YA Black is going to kind of be a stud. So I've talked about, this is a bit tangential, but like, how do you get out of the middle in the NFL, right? In any sports league that's capped and, reverse order draft or something to that effect. You got to hit on a lot of draft picks, like late round guys too. Like you just have to overwhelm with talent because you're not going to have access to the top quarterback who just changes everything. And YA Black might be one of those guys that, okay, this could actually move the needle a little bit because you got him on day 3. So I'm into that. He's my pick for defensive rookie of the year and, a made up Steelers defensive rookie of the year. Made up Steelers offensive rookie of the year, Caleb Johnson as well. Like, what are the other options? I considered sending you a message and being like, let's just include Fautanu and Roman Wilson because they both essentially redshirted. But it's Caleb Johnson. We're not going to overcomplicate that discussion. Offensive player of the year, as I work back. I don't know. I decided to work backwards. If I'm predicting Jonnu Smith could maybe, like, I'm not stamping that, but he could maybe lead the team in receptions and be like this huge yak guy. I probably got to put him as the offensive player of the year, right? Like this is all tied into the theory of Rodgers wants to get rid of that thing. He does not want to get hit. It's going to be out quick. And your best yak guy is Jonnu Smith, in my opinion. So we'll take a swing on that. And then TJ for team MVP and team defensive player of the year. It has to be. If it's not, then that contract is already looking like a disaster. Like he has to be the best defensive player on this team. Regardless of how good I think and good and important I think Hayward was last year. Now, drum roll, please. Our final record predictions. I have them both on the same graphic. So like if you're on
Ooh,
YouTube, you're going to get them both at the same time. No surprise here. Mark, you went with
10-7. 10 and
and I went
7.
with 9-8. And that sounds like a Mike Tomlin team if I've ever heard of one. What are your thoughts? Like playoffs, you're thinking wild card. Do you think this team can win a playoff game?
Oh man. Oh man. I mean, I am hopeful that they know something I don't.
Mhm.
Frankly, that's what I'm banking on in terms of postseason success. Because on paper, when I look at this team, I don't see it. And I really want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm a fan. Like I definitely want them to win a playoff game for the first time in like a decade. Like it'd be great.
In a
Um,
glass half full take, not to jump you on this, but in a glass half full world, you have Aaron Rodgers does the Brett Favre thing
yeah,
in Minnesota,
it's
and
there.
it's like good again.
Yeah,
And DK Metcalf is an upgrade over George Pickens, and
yeah,
he's like more level headed. Caleb Johnson's a stud. The young offensive line coalesces and like everything hits. There's a real glass half full take of like, this team could be an AFC championship team.
yeah.
I do not have that take. I think
No.
that's way too rose colored glasses.
Yeah, I think some of those things maybe hit. Like
Yeah.
I think some of the offensive line, like we talked about, maybe gets a little better. I
Hmm.
like Caleb. I think he's going to be, a solid 1-2 with Warren in that backfield.
Hmm.
I think Rodgers is, if he's healthy, which I have to keep saying like 80
Yeah.
times because truly I don't know at this point. If he's healthy and doesn't, cause a ton of drama off the field for whatever reason, um, should be an upgrade over Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And that
Yeah.
team went 9-8, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, and lost in the first and got demolished by the Ravens. But so like I see playoffs. Um, I see a path to a playoff win, but it really like it just depends on who they're playing, man. Like
Yeah.
if
It's
they're
so matchup
if they're
dependent.
playing the Chiefs or the Bills or even the Ravens again, like anyone with a capable passer, like I feel like every time they're in that position, they just fold.
Yeah.
And that's on culture, that's on coaching, culture, the players, whatever. But yeah. So ceiling is a playoff win for sure.
I agree about the ceiling. That's my absolute ceiling. Like
Yeah.
that's not I think 9-8 probably gets you into the playoffs as the 7th seed. Eh, maybe. And I would probably rather it not
Yeah.
because it's not going to be pretty. You're going to get the Bills, you're going to get the Ravens. You're not probably going to get the AFC South winner.
Hmm.
And even if you did, I don't think you win that game. And I think we finally, at the end of the year, start to have, I think the discussion gained some more steam of how long can we do this with
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin? Like, how long can we actually do this? Because I'm pretty exacerbated now with just like, okay, we're again, we can't win a playoff game. Again, the Steelers are in a situation where they're good. They're not getting a draft pick, a high draft pick, and they're not winning a playoff game. This,
Yeah.
what is the point at that point?
Yeah.
The point is Art Rooney wants to, Mike Tomlin wants to keep his record. Art Rooney wants to fill the stadium and hopefully get to the playoffs. And my sights are set on next year's draft and all the draft capital they have and the quarterback that they may take. And that is a downer way to feel when you have a 4-time MVP and 1-time Super Bowl champion who beat your team in the Super Bowl on your roster, right? That is a pessimistic way to feel, but it's ultimately how I feel about this season is I'm just get me to next year. Let me see who the young quarterback is because this team could maybe be fun. I'm interested in a lot of the young pieces. Okay, Rodgers, whatever. Like, it'll be nice to see an offense with maybe a bit more of a competent quarterback if he is. But to what end? Right? To what end?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's pretty lukewarm feeling. 9-8 feels like a Mike Tomlin special. And then hopefully we can have a real discussion about like, is the quarterback that the Steelers eventually do draft and trade up to draft, because that feels inevitable. Is Mike Tomlin the guy you want shepherding that guy through the early years of his career? I would say absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think Mike Tomlin's gonna like that conversation.
No, I don't think
'Cause I
so, and
feel
I
like I
don't
know
think
how
the
that's
national
gonna
media
go.
is gonna like it either, and we can have that conversation when it's time to have that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, we'll save that one.
Yeah. As you can tell, we have plenty to say. Week 1, just quickly, your thoughts. Do you think the Steelers start off 1-0 on the road at New York? Aaron Rodgers playing the Jets, like there's some tension there. But I don't think it's like the most highly anticipated matchup
No.
of week 1. So what are your feelings heading into that one?
I feel like if I had to pick, I feel like they'll win. It's just it's gonna be ugly, man. Like
Yeah, I
it just
agree.
feels like the kind of game that it's a classic Mike Tomlin win. It's gonna
Mhm.
be like some like 16 to I don't know, like 9 or something
Yeah, it's
stupid.
16-12
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Rodgers drives the ball into the red zone like every drive, but they have to kick a field goal because they can't, punch it into the freaking end zone, like stuff like
Yeah.
that, right? I definitely want to see how they match up against Fields. I'm very interested in that. I want to see if he took a step forward at all this offseason. I know he got
Mhm.
off to kind of a weird start in practice. There were a lot of videos going around where he was struggling, but it seemed like he kind of rounded into form a bit later. So definitely interested there. And yeah, honestly, like want to see how the secondary performs against you got Garrett Wilson, you've got, some guys you've got some guys um, on that receiving core that, I think could be at least a decent early test. So
Yeah.
definitely most interested in the secondary and Fields for sure.
The position I'm most interested in, and I also think the Steelers will probably win. I also think it'll be kind of ugly. Isn't it always early in the season? And then we have the conversation about like, is offensive football dying? And it's like,
Mhm.
no, defense is always ahead of offense this time of year. Um, the position I'm probably most interested in is inside linebacker. And is Patrick Queen actually a guy that can run an offense and be the green dot, or run a defense and be the green dot and get everyone in the right position and be in the right position himself? Because I know he was best in Baltimore when he was just next to Roquan Smith and flying around. And okay, see ball, hit ball. Like your job is simple. And now it's not simple anymore. And I don't think he was good last year. And I think maybe Peyton Wilson could be that player and maybe Patrick Queen could. But when you get a quarterback who is theoretically an option threat, the Steelers did not use him that way, but a offensive coaching staff that's trying to maximize Justin Fields' skill set instead of just making him a pocket passer
Crazy.
is going to use him as an option threat and a running threat and use the 11-man run game. That comes down a lot to your linebacker play and like, are they disciplined? Are they disciplined with their eyes? Are you getting them displaced on RPOs and things like that? So that'll be interesting to me because, we don't know what to expect from this new defensive line and we don't know what to expect from this new look secondary. And I don't think we know what to expect from this linebacker group either. Like even though it's the same as last year, I think I have some concerns there, and I'm interested to see how they'll match up against Fields and that offense because I think this staff that's a little more invested in Fields is going to say, we just got to lead into your strengths, man. Like you're in shotgun, RPO you to death, and let's try to college offense this thing up. And that's just, we got to victimize linebackers and throw behind them and move them and move their eyes and get them to be a step late. So if any of that works, that's a big problem for the Steelers defense. So that's my what to watch for next week. Mark Powell, thank you for joining me. We will
Always.
be back together for an instant reaction on Sunday. So make sure you are subscribed to the Steel Curtain podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe to this episode. And thank you very much. As always, I'll talk to you next week, and go Steelers.